Ah, Valdosta, Georgia. It was probably the last place I expected to end up at, and the last place I thought I'd be finishing my college career at. That's not a dig or anything, it's just I had never considered Valdosta or VSU until I was met with challenging circumstances in my college career. And yet, ever since the fall of 2017, I've called Valdosta home. There's a lot that I went through to end up at Valdosta State, but the growing pains as a person didn't stop when I got here either. This documentary will tell the story of my college career, how I got to VSU, and examine how I've changed during that time. This is Blazing My Own Trail. My college journey is one that is a bit complicated, so let's start from the very beginning. Faulkner University. Faulkner is where I began my college career. In high school, football was everything to me, and I was fortunate enough to receive an athletic scholarship from Faulkner to continue playing the game that I loved while having a significant portion of my college paid for. During my time at Faulkner, I made several lifelong friends, made many memories, and got better as a football player. However, as good as I had it, I seemed to be yearning for more. You see, while transitioning from my junior to senior year in high school, I would tend to get coaches from a few decent-sized Division I schools visiting me at school from time to time, which was pretty exciting. And so it was that. I had high school coaches telling me that I had the ability to compete at the Division I level. And on top of that, during my senior year, I was sitting on a Division I FCS offer. And like I said, I was sitting because that offer unfortunately did go away because I didn't commit in time. Someone else in my position committed, and the offer was no longer standing. And that's how recruiting works. But the point is that I was told and I felt that I could compete at that level. Because after all, the only reason why I ended up at Faulkner, as thankful as I was because I had no other options and I had to take what I could get. But that chip on my shoulder that I was better than the place that I was at was always present during my time at Faulkner, and it was a motivating force to get better so I could one day transfer. And after a standout sophomore season, I knew it was time to make my big move. I put together my highlight tape, requested an athletic release from the university, and applied to the school I had my eyes on, Georgia Southern. Coming out of an NAIA school like Faulkner, which is different from the NCAA, I knew that no team was going to outright offer me, even though many before me had treated Faulkner as a junior college that they used as a springboard to other bigger schools. This was fine because Southern was affordable, I could get in-state tuition because my family lives in Georgia, and Southern was one of those small D1 schools that I thought I could be competitive at. So the plan was simple. I transferred down to Georgia Southern and simply walk on to the football team. I was confident in my abilities as a player, I had the work ethic to do it, to walk on, and so I was on the right track. I had applied to the university in November. By December, I was accepted, so all that I had to do was move all my stuff down there, get all my paperwork in order, enroll into the school, and walk on to the team. And to sweeten the deal, one of the upperclassmen that I was talking to at Faulkner, because I was asking him for guidance about transferring and how to go about it, he let me know that he was headed down to Southern to intern as a strength and conditioning assistant. So it was kind of like a package deal. They get a strength and conditioning intern and they get a hardworking walk-on. So it was all seemingly going according to plan. It's often been said that people think the grass is always greener on the other side. That perfectly described my situation at Georgia Southern. Looking back on it, the Georgia Southern experiment makes sense in the grand scheme of things, but at the time, I thought it was a horrible miscalculation. It seemed like the moment I set foot on campus, nothing went right. As a walk-on or prospective walk-on is supposed to do, I went up to the field house almost every single day, bugging the receptionist and anyone who was up there at the moment about when they would be holding walk-on tryouts. And at first they told me that they hadn't figured it out yet and to come back and check later. During my campus tour in December, I was fortunate enough to just so happen to run into the head coach while I was up at the field house just exploring, and I was able to give him a hard copy of my highlight tape. And I explained to him that I was transferring there in the spring and that I was interested in walking on. And he told me to come up on the first day of school and see if, maybe we could work something out in regards to me walking on. But after that conversation, it's like every single time I came up there, I would just get turned away by the receptionist. And they would either tell me that, he's in meetings or he's just busy. And I remember one receptionist one time said that you have to have a meeting to meet with the coach. You have to have a meeting set up. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, is there a way I could set one up? And she just told me, no, you can't set up a meeting with him. So this was the kind of game that they were playing. Eventually, I was told that tryouts would be sometime in February, like mid-February. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm training, I'm lifting weights, I'm doing drills, and now I have an idea of when I need to be ready. And in hindsight, they probably just told me this so I wouldn't keep coming up there. So, mid-February rolls around. I believe it was Monday, February the 13th. First day of that middle week in February. I roll up to the field house, coming prepared to ask specifically what the details were for the tryout that was supposed to take place around that week. I was able to flag down a coach in the front lobby, and I asked him about walk-on tryouts. And he tells me that they would not be holding walk-on tryouts for the spring. I asked him a few more questions as to why. I kept persisting, but he just kept telling me that they would not be holding walk-on tryouts for the spring. So my plan was completely shattered. I was very, very sad. I was distraught. I convinced my parents to let me transfer. I moved to a school that I knew nobody at. And on top of that, the whole reason for me being there to play football and to join the football team was now gone. So this obviously made me very upset, and this probably kickstarted one of the darker periods of my life. And it wasn't insanely dark or anything, but mentally I was very, very fragile, because these circumstances, for the first time ever in my life, stripped me of my identity. And this is when identity becomes one of the main themes of this documentary. Because up until that point, my entire identity as a person was, I am an athlete, I'm a football player, it's literally who I am. So when I was told that there wouldn't be any walk-on tryouts, and that everything that I had been working for was now null and void, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was questioning what my purpose was. I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? I was already an outsider because I was trying to walk on to a football team that hadn't offered me or had any kind of contact with me. But now that that community had essentially rejected me, I felt very out of place at Southern. I wasn't an athlete on a team. I wasn't a frat guy. Rush was over by then. And I wasn't even a regular student either, because I'm like 260 pounds at that time. I can bench 385 and squat 500. So it's like, what am I, just a freak? To add to my troubles, I injured my shoulder a few days after finding out that there would be no walk-on tryouts, and I was subsequently shelved for a whole month doing physical therapy. During this time period, I also discovered that Georgia Southern would be offering a walk-on summer program called the Silver Bullet Program, where you would basically work out with a team for all of summer workouts and then see at the end if you made the team. So at that moment, I realized that I had to start planning my escape, and I realized that I was going to have to transfer yet again, because I was not about to risk staying there, going through this program, possibly not making it, and burning a year of eligibility. So I started scouting schools, and I had a pair of schools that I was closely looking at: North Alabama and Valdosta State University. So fast forward to May. My shoulder is strong and healthy again. I had moved all my stuff out of Georgia Southern, and although I could not catch a break there to save my life, I was excited to get out of there, and I was hopeful for the future. I came home for a few weeks and I moderately lifted, but more so focused on running and football drills. And then my dad and I departed for North Alabama on May 22nd for the tryout that took place on May 24th. So tryout day rolls around, and I'm ecstatic to show these people what I'm made of. And guess what? I get injured again. I injured my left knee when I was running east to west on the shuttle drill, which is where you run 5 yards to the left, 10 yards to the right, and then through your starting point. And when I was cutting, and when my knee was at a low angle, and when I was changing direction, I heard a big ass pop in my left knee. But I finished the drill and I tried to walk it off, but that thing was killing me. I couldn't apply any kind of pressure to it. I couldn't jog, I couldn't run, I couldn't even get in a stance. I had to forego the rest of the tryout. I draped my shirt over my head. My dad and I walked back to our car, and as soon as we closed the door, I just started bawling, crying. I was crying, I was yelling, I was cursing at God, I was yelling how this isn't fair. I was just a mess. I was so mad. Number one, because I was doing great before I got injured. I was killing it. Number two, because now North Alabama is obviously not going to take me. I'm damaged goods. I couldn't even finish the tryout. We didn't even get to the drills yet. We were just doing preliminary stuff. Number three, I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to be good for the next tryout at Valdosta State, which is in 10 days, when I have a busted knee? And number four, because reality is starting to set in, that if I don't crush it at this next tryout at Valdosta State, my football career is over. Thankfully for me, this months-long saga concluded with a happy ending. Somehow, my knee was good for the tryout, and against all odds, I went down there, absolutely blew it out of the water at the tryout, and the D-line coach told me that it was as good as done. I received a phone call from him the next day telling me that they were going to be bringing me on as a walk-on, and I was just ecstatic. I was on cloud nine, and I was, the months-long struggle was finally over. I was going to be able to continue my football career, and I was able to call myself a Blazer. Now, due to NCAA transfer rules, I did have to sit out that season, but I didn't even care. I just used that year as a redshirt year to get bigger, faster, stronger, so I could be at my absolute best for spring ball. To summarize, my football career at VSU followed the same exact pattern that has already been laid out in this documentary. I was doing really well in fall camp. I started out 5th on the depth chart, worked my way all the way up to 2nd string at nose tackle 2 weeks before our first game, which was absolutely huge for a walk-on. But then once again, what happened shortly after that? I get hurt again. I pulled my back while doing power cleans in the weight room. We found out that it was back spasms, which was extremely painful, really sucked. I was able to recover and return in 2 weeks, but it was basically all downhill from there. I, coming back, I obviously lost my spot on the depth chart. I was no longer number 2. I missed our first game. But more than that, I came back and I was just not the same player that I was in fall camp. I could still practice and sometimes I would do really well, but I just had to do more since I injured my back. More stretching, more warming up. I had to take pills and muscle relaxers before each practice, and it was very tough to maintain. So as the season dragged on, I began falling out of love with football. I wasn't at the same level that I was at in fall camp. I hated having to do so much with my body just so that my back could be at maybe 60% healthy. Sacrificing my body to only get a little bit of playing time wasn't worth it. And overall, I began to dislike the environment of the program. It was militant and stressful. Up until this point, I had also wanted to be a college football coach. Maybe not a head coach, but a position coach. But in seeing how serious it actually was at a higher level, and seeing how complex the kids' game really was, it made me lose interest. It was no longer fun. Rather, it was work. At the same time as I was losing interest in football, I surprisingly seemed to be showing a lot more interest in my studies, which was totally weird since I had always been a jock type. But around that time, studying the playbook became dull to me, while studying mass media became fascinating to me. And there was one defining moment that semester in my communications class, which really made the light bulb go off in my head. We were giving some kind of short speech in that class about ourselves, and mind you, at the time I was a horrible speaker. I mean, despite being a big football player and being in physical shape, I was very, very nervous when speaking in front of people and giving speeches and public speaking. But during this speech, through a shaky voice, I said that there is more to me than football. There's more to me as a person than just football. There are other things that interest me. Football is not exactly who I am. It doesn't completely define me. Which, up until this time in my life, was the total opposite. This whole documentary, up until now, my identity as a person had been football, and I'm an athlete. But in that moment, that's when things started to change for me. And I started to realize that, maybe football isn't everything. Maybe there's more to life than football. And that's when I really started to evolve as a person. And I said this through a shaky voice because, number one, I was nervous, but number two, because this was something that really meant a lot to me. And as I said it, I felt like a huge weight was being lifted off of my chest. 2 weeks after that, I quit football for good. And while it was hard in the moment telling my head coach that I was done with the game that I loved so much for so long, I was ready to walk away, and I was at peace with my decision. I was ready to spread my wings and become something new. During my time in the mass media program at VSU, I've come a very long way from the days of not being comfortable in front of a camera or being short of breath while attempting to do public speaking, as those were challenges I faced when I first took announcing with Professor Black in the fall of 2018. But the exercises we did in that class were engaging and quite fun, which loosened me up and in turn gave me confidence when speaking and being in front of a camera. And my time in that class laid a solid foundation for my oral development. Announcing class in the fall of 2018 made it possible for me to reinvent myself. When I first started taking mass media classes, and when I started to take practical mass media classes like announcing, I had no idea what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be. And back in 2018, there's no way I could have seen myself going from being so poor in verbal communication to it becoming a major strength of mine. But as I moved through announcing and Production 1 and many other mass media courses, I began to develop a skill set that I didn't originally intend to develop. That's just kind of how the cookie crumbled as I moved through all these mass media courses. Another thing was that since I was now done with football, I had more time on my hands, and I was able to finally delve into other things that interest me. And I was always interested in current events and news, so in the summer of 2019, I secured an internship at WDHN, a local news station in the city that I graduated high school from. This internship was extremely invaluable, as I learned how to report, interview, make news packages, and work in a fast-paced newsroom. This gave me even more experience and confidence in front of the camera, and really jump-started my consideration of news as a possible career opportunity. Fast forward to fall of 2020, and I was pretty much completely comfortable being an on-air talent. My communication skills had been developed and molded through all the classes I took up until that point. And even more, I just enjoyed it. I had fun taking part in productions and being a talent. That semester, I started News Workshop and primarily anchored for each weekly broadcast, and I loved it. Reading the teleprompter was a new frontier, but the more I got used to it, the more fun anchoring became. So it was like over time, having enjoyed doing productions and with just more and more repetition, it all kind of just fell into place for me. And before I knew it, this became my new thing. Playing football had instilled in me a great work ethic and competitive spirit. So now that I was done playing it, I was able to channel that work ethic and competitive spirit into something new, which was mass media and reporting and anchoring. So through constant repetition, enjoying what I was doing, having fun with what I was doing, and wanting to be the best at what I was doing, being an on-air talent became my new craft that replaced football. And with a new craft came a new identity. As a result of me developing better communication skills, I'm much more social and outgoing now. I've lost a bunch of weight since quitting football, and my face is thinner and I feel healthier. And, I'm no longer the big burly football player. Instead, I am the clean-cut guy that reads and reports the news. Valdosta was truly the last place I thought I would finish my college career, but I couldn't have loved the outcome anymore. Football brought me to VSU, but during my time here, I became something different that I couldn't have even fathomed when I first arrived. Whether it was choosing to leave Faulkner, risking the dice at Southern, or deciding to walk away from a sport I once couldn't live without, it's safe to say I'm fine with carving my own path, and that's the way I like it. There's no doubt I'll continue to evolve and take on new identities as time passes on, as I navigate through life. But no matter what those identities might be, and no matter where I go, one thing's for sure, I do it my way, and I blaze my own trail.